Welcome back to Stormi Tells Ghost Stories Haunted New Orleans on my Girls Rock Productions channel. Remember to like and subscribe to my channel for more content and leave a few comments below to help me out. In many cities worldwide that are dominated by the Catholic faith, the days leading up to Easter are known as Lent, which is a period of fasting and penitence. It begins on Ash Wednesday, reminding us of our mortality. The Tuesday before Ash Wednesday is known as Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras in French. This is the last grasp of frivolity before Lent. The New Orleans roots are very much Catholic, going all the way back to its colony days. And it is known worldwide for its Mardi Gras celebrations. They actually have what they call Carnival, which starts on the 12th day and leads all the way up to the 4-day weekend of parades, ending in the big Mardi Gras bash on Tuesday before Ash Wednesday. Mardi Gras was being celebrated by the Christians long before New Orleans was founded, but it was popular in the colony, throwing masquerade balls and street processions all the way back to the 1700s. Today, the bars in French Quarter still take part in these celebrations. Some of those pubs, bars, and clubs are also very haunted. In this video, I will be bringing you to these ghostly party scenes. From the Irish pub that was once home to a brewery named for the President Andrew Jackson, to a jazz club that was originally a lodging house. From an absinthe bar that might be haunted by New Orleans' most infamous pirate, to a bar that housed a great deal of tragedy. To the bar that is the home of the Hurricane, the former O'Flaherty's Irish Pub, the Mahogany Jazz Club, the Absinthe House Bar, the Jiminy Bar, and Pat O'Brien's Bar. I'm going to start with the pub that was the site of a gruesome murder-suicide, the former O'Flaherty's Irish Pub. Hey guys and gals, before we get into the story, if you like any of the arts and crafts you see me doing and may like to buy them or have me make something custom for you, check out my Etsy where I sell some of my original pieces as well as some of the do-it-yourself pieces that I have already done in these videos. There is also an option for you to have me hand-make custom items as well. There is a link to my Etsy shop in the description box and comments below. Now, back to the story. The history of what was O'Flaherty's Irish Pub is a long, dark one. It was originally known as the Lenoir House and was named after its original owner, Louis Lenoir. However, its story actually begins decades later. In 1803, Guillaume Marr moved with his wife, the once widowed Mary Wheaton, to New Orleans. That's when he would purchase the property that once housed the O'Flaherty's Irish Pub, which was 2 buildings. He established a feed store on the ground floor of one of the buildings and an oyster shucking business on the other. He and Mary worked the businesses and lived in the rooms above until Guillaume died less than 3 years later. Mary inherited the buildings and attracted the attention of Joseph Baptandier, who was another business owner. They wed in 1806, but Mary wasn't enough for Joseph's ravenous sexual appetite. He would enter into a secret plaisade, an arrangement where a European man would take on and provide for a mistress of native or mixed blood, with a woman named Angelique. This agreement included understood secrecy, and in return for being provided for, the mistress would agree to not interfere with the man's social life. But these relationships didn't always work out, for obvious reasons. As time passed, Angelique became frustrated with the arrangement. She wanted more from Joseph. Legend has it she was staying in a small attic room while Joseph and Mary stayed in much more comfortable quarters, so it's understandable that she wanted more. In 1810, things would hit their boiling point. Angelique threatened to tell Mary about her relationship with Joseph. Enraged, Joseph choked Angelique until she fell unconscious and then threw her from the balcony into the courtyard below. Angelique would die from a broken neck caused by the fall. To cover his tracks, Joseph quickly stashed her body in a sewer hole and covered it with dirt. He soon realized that a slave boy had seen everything and ran to tell the authorities. Disgraced and afraid of the consequences, Joseph went to the third-floor balcony, tied a rope around his neck, and hung himself. After losing her third husband, Mary was convinced that marriage just wasn't for her. She would die 7 years later in 1817 at the ripe old age of 35. For a while, the house would stand dormant, but in 1853, the building was used as a quarantine for yellow fever patients. While nobody knows how many people spent their last miserable days suffering within these walls, it is known that many would choose to end their suffering on their own terms. Several of the patients would jump from the windows to their death, which resulted in the windows being barred. It would continue to quietly pass through several generations of a few families over the years and was bought by the Jackson Brewing Company, named for the 7th President of the U.S., Andrew Jackson. The brewery would close down in 1974 and a little over a decade later would open up as O'Flaherty's Irish Pub. And this is when the stories of the paranormal activity began to circulate. In 1985, Danny O'Flaherty would open up the Irish Pub, which focused on good Celtic music and good drinks. It would regularly play host to some of the finest Celtic musicians in America and Europe, and Danny himself would even entertain the guests. Something about the lively atmosphere seemed to awaken the long-dormant spirits of Joseph, Angelique, and Mary, and each of the spirits continued to play their different roles. Mary's ghost seems to be the quietest of the three, but she gets easily annoyed with the more rowdy patrons. A stern nudge on the shoulder from an unseen hand is quite uncommon. That is said to be Mary trying to do what she can to maintain civility in her house. Mary is also witnessed in the O'Flaherty's gift shop. If a pretty young woman walked in, she was known to dislodge books from the shelves. It seems that Mary may have known about Angelique after all. Speaking of the mistress, Angelique enjoyed the lively atmosphere of O'Flaherty's. She was known to mingle with visitors, especially handsome young men. They would feel an invisible hand caressing their hands and necks. She was also known to have an attitude at times as well. Occasionally she would throw a tantrum, slinging bottles around. Every time Danny would start singing Red is the Rose, however, she'd calm right down, and she would often be seen wistfully enjoying the Irish tune. The most frightening of the three main spirits haunting the Lenoir house is that of Joseph. He never leaves the third floor. Witnesses still see Joseph hanging from the balcony. He is known to push, scratch, and even try to strangle visitors, especially ghost hunters. Others have reported intense energies, usually sad or angry, on the third floor. A few have heard the voice of a man asking them to leave. Joseph let his temper get to him, now cursed to eternal shame. He wants to forget it, and he wants others to forget it as well, so he can move on. People will often report muffled coughs and sniffles throughout the building, especially near the windows. Could these possibly be the victims of the yellow fever that plagued the city? O'Flaherty's would close its doors permanently in 2005 after Hurricane Katrina. Now, the building is occupied by Creole Cookery, as you may have noticed from the photos. They remodeled the building, removing the infamous balcony from which Angelique was thrown and the fountain that marked her temporary grave. Despite the changes, the spirits are still present today. Now, let's leave the former pub with a fountain for a grave marker and head over to the jazz club that was once home to a string of suicides, the Mahogany Jazz Hall. 125 Charter Street is home to a very popular and haunted jazz club known as Mahogany Jazz Hall. These hauntings are more than likely due to the dark history that went on inside this building. It starts back in 1888 when the club was a lodging house owned by Fred Folks. Charles Murphy, a 26-year-old shoemaker from England, came to stay at Folks' lodging house. He had been in New Orleans for about 2 years and had been employed by Anderson's shoe factory on North Peters when he was struck with a fever that he just couldn't seem to shake. His illness was making it difficult for him to work the long hours that he had been accustomed to and was sending him into a depressed state. On the morning of March 31st, Mr. Folks did his regular 6 a.m. wake-up call on Murphy. They chatted briefly and Folks went downstairs. Once alone, Murphy secured a piece of clothing line about 2.5 feet long, made a loop knot on one end, placed it around his neck, and fastened the other end to an iron hook on the wall. 3 hours later, Mr. Folks found him. He had strangled himself to death. Murphy wasn't the only one that was found himself in a desperate state of mind at Folks' lodging house. Just 2 years later, George Kreis, a 32-year-old German immigrant, was stranded in New Orleans when he found Folks' lodging house. He arrived in the city a few weeks earlier and already spent all the money he arrived with in the Crescent City. He was now penniless and homeless, but Folks gave him a room and helped him find some work. Mr. Folks had a friend who lived in the country. He decided to reach out to this man and asked about giving Kreis a job. The gentleman said he would hire Kreis, but Kreis needed to know how to bake. Kreis had the fake it till you make it type attitude, and even though he didn't have a clue how to bake, he said he would take the job. He thanked Mr. Folks and went about his day in his usual good-natured, humorous self. On Valentine's Day, 1890, George Kreis took the last bit of money he had and purchased a Defender .32 caliber revolver. At 10 p.m. in good spirits, Kreis retired to his room as usual. Once behind closed doors of the room, Kreis put the muzzle of his gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger, leaving poor Mr. Folks to find another suicide victim in his lodging house. That wasn't the last of the tragedies at 125 Charter, however. The headlines on November 22nd, 1892 read, "Shot in the dark, mysterious killing on 125 Charter Street." Scotty Boyle was well-known character and vagrant on the streets of the quarter, and he was standing right where the door of the Mahogany Jazz Hall is now. He was most likely loitering, but reports say he was minding his own business when a tall man in a dark brown suit approached him and instigated a confrontation. Tempers began to flare and voices were raised. A bystander heard the man in the brown suit say, "I'll shoot you for you." Next thing you know, a gunshot rings out. Scotty Boyle had been shot in the face with the bullet exiting through his left temple. The man in the brown suit fled the scene. He ran down Charter Street to Toulouse and then headed towards the river, as Scotty's body fell into the gutter in front of 125 Charter. He was alive for a short while, unable to speak, and he died by the time the ambulance reached him. Weeks later, a man caught in armed robbery of the sheriff's office, not really a bright thief, I guess, was held as a suspect in the murder, but he was proven innocent in both cases, and Scotty's killer was never found. Today, the Mahogany Jazz Hall is a popular stop on the haunted pub crawls in the French Quarter. Many of the staff who worked there have had run-ins with the ghosts that haunt the building. Unseen hands touching them, disembodied whispers in their ears, and the shadows of people walking around the club when it's empty. Now, let's leave the Jazz Hall, that is the site of an unsolved murder, and head over to the other bar owned by the same entrepreneur, the Old Absinthe House Bar. Since 1807, the Old Absinthe House has served as a gathering place for pirates, politicians, and poets. Originally built in 1752, the Old Absinthe House's notoriety exists for two main reasons. It was allegedly the meeting place for General Andrew Jackson and the infamous New Orleans pirate Jean Lafitte prior to the Battle of 1815, and a hit spot during Prohibition a century later. The original building was destroyed in the 1788 Great Friday Fire, which ravaged the city within hours. All that stood after the smoke and soot settled at the Old Absinthe House was its fireplace. Fortunately, the building at 240 Bourbon Street was reconstructed in 1806 by two Spaniards, Pedro Front and Francisco Hucaldelia, who operated a grocery store there for 40 years. They sold globally imported wines and tobacco products and made a decent profit off their business. Absinthe would become popular in New Orleans and in 1846, causing Alex's Coffee House to be eager to take over the site to meet the growing demands of their clientele. During the 19th century, you went to a cafe for coffee, and you went to a coffee house for your other vices. The coffee houses in Louisiana operated similarly to the ones in Europe, which meant that other vices generally referred to the Green Fairy, another name for absinthe or other drugs. Alex's Coffee House's popularity grew almost directly from the start. Tourists to New Orleans visited the bar regularly, spending their nights partying away until dawn when the workers headed to their jobs. It became the Absinthe Room by 1874 when mixologist Cayetano Ferrer created the Absinthe House Frappe. The Absinthe Room was even more popular than Alex's Coffee House. That is, until Prohibition struck, and the Absinthe Room faced the possibility of immediate closure. Suddenly, absinthe was no longer all the rage, and the government was actually threatening to have it abolished. The speakeasy's notoriety nearly led to its downfall when the authorities learned of its dealings and threatened to burn it down. But New Orleaners were one step ahead of the law. The owners would move the bar's operations to a secret location a few blocks down Bourbon Street, where they set up shop in an abandoned warehouse and continued to shell out business to anyone in the know. Today, this warehouse is now home to the Mango Daiquiri Shop. When Prohibition was overturned, the Absinthe House returned to its former location and went back to work. The ghosts of its past wouldn't come out to play until 2004, after the building was renovated. The Old Absinthe House has seen its share of celebrities, including writers such as Oscar Wilde, Walt Whitman, P.T. Barnum, Mark Twain, and pirates and politicians such as Jean Lafitte, Robert E. Lee, and Franklin Roosevelt, as well as celebrities including Frank Sinatra and Liza Minnelli. In fact, the old saying goes, everyone you have ever known or will ever know eventually ends up at the old Absinthe House. There's a lot more to this bar than its stubborn resilience through history. When Jackson came to New Orleans, he found a city that was unprepared for battle and time was running short. That is until Jean Lafitte approached Jackson with a deal. Legend has it, on the second floor of the old Absinthe House, Jackson agreed to release Lafitte's army of pirates from prison and to grant full pardons for anyone that would fight in the Battle of New Orleans. Lafitte and his men were experts on the swamps and surrounding waters, which proved instrumental for America's victory over the British. It seems that Jean Lafitte had a strategic plan for meeting at the old Absinthe House. Legends tell of secret underground tunnels linking the tavern to his blacksmith shop further down on Bourbon Street. I will be visiting this location in a later video. Though no evidence of these tunnels has been found, we could speculate that perhaps Lafitte wanted to meet in a place where he knew his exits, including secret ones. It is no surprise that over its over 2 centuries of history, the old Absinthe House has picked up a few patrons, both living and deceased. In fact, the tavern still caters to some of its very first patrons. The ghost of Jean Lafitte himself is said to throw an occasional spectral party or two, donning his signature pirate hat, and is even blamed for the occasional sounds of unexplained laughter and carousing. Visitors and employees have also reported seeing the ghost of Andrew Jackson, as well as Marie Laveau and Benjamin Butler. Along with the famous ghosts, there are also other spirits who frequent this bar. A woman in a long white dress, a child running around the 3rd floor, as well as drops in temperature, to name a few occurrences. Perhaps these are the ghosts responsible for doors inexplicably opening, bottles and chairs moving about the bar, and mysterious whispers from unseen sources. Now, let's leave this ancient bar with plenty of famous ghosts, and past and present, and head over to the site of a horrific mass murder, the Jiminy Bar. Today, the Jiminy is one of the best of the worst dive bars in New Orleans, but during the 1970s, the Upstairs Lounge was a thriving gay bar in the French Quarter of New Orleans. The Upstairs was a safe space where the LGBTQ community could congregate amidst the deep hatred during that time in the Bible Belt. Patrons gathered in the Upstairs to drink, play piano, and enjoy drag shows. The building was also the headquarters of the New Orleans chapter of the Metropolitan Community Church, the MCC for short. The MCC was the first LGBTQ church in the U.S. Despite the fact that the New Orleans LGBTQ community was forced to remain low-key, the Upstairs Lounge provided hope, but that would all change one fiery evening. During the 1970s, New Orleans, like most of the nation, was still very hostile towards gays. The police hardly investigated, and the attack remains a cold case to this day. On Sunday, June 24th, 1973, underground church and gay bar came to a tragic end. Someone set fire to the Upstairs Lounge, killing 32 people and injuring 15 others. The arson was the deadliest attack against the LGBTQ community until the Pulse nightclub shooting in 2016. At the time of the fire, the three-story building on 604 Iberville Street was occupied by the Jiminy Lounge restaurant and its offices on the first floor, the upstairs lounge, and the MCC on the second and third floors. The New Orleans MCC had just taken off and was still gaining traction. Though there were dozens of gay bars in New Orleans at the time, the LGBTQ community was still forced to remain underground. The upstairs was one of these bars, offering a safe space for the community to gather. Nights usually ended with the patrons singing songs around the bar's grand piano. Sundays were special at the upstairs. The MCC held a Sunday service during the day in the bar's theater, and the bar held a weekly beer bust at night with an all-you-can-eat buffet and beer for only $1. This Sunday in particular was different. It was the last Sunday of Pride Week, marking the 4th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. 2 other chapters of the MCC had also been firebombed in Los Angeles and Nashville earlier that year, and the LA chapter had been attacked right after the historic Roe v. Wade ruling. About 125 patrons gathered at the upstairs for the Sunday service. Then the service was over. Most of them stayed for the bar bust, which began at 5 p.m. A few minutes before 8 p.m., the buzzer at the front door rang, which this usually indicated the arrival of a taxi. About 50 to 90 people remained in the lounge, most of them from the MCC. When someone opened the front door, they found the wooden staircase engulfed in flames. The narrow wooden staircase was the only clearly marked way to exit the building. The crowd panicked. Bartender Douglas Rasmussen signaled to the crowd, trying to lead them through the unmarked back door. Part of the crowd heard his call, but some didn't get the signal and were stuck in the inferno. The massive floor-to-ceiling windows were seemingly the only way out, but they were reinforced with steel bars. Some were able to squeeze through the 14-inch gaps, while others weren't so lucky. By the time the fire department arrived, the building burned out. 32 people had perished and 15 others were wounded by the burns or smoke inhalation. Homophobia was a norm at the time, and the police did little to no work on the investigation. The only suspect was a man named Roger Dale Nunes, who had been thrown out of the bar earlier that day after a confrontation. Nunes committed suicide a year later in 1974. Many were skeptical. The police dismissed the bar as being a thieves' hangout to the media. It was obviously a homophobic attack, but the police closed the case after finding no leads. The media reaction echoed that of the general public. The bar fire made headlines the day after the fire and was never spoke of again. Very few newspapers even acknowledged that the upstairs was a gay bar, nor that the incident was a hate crime. Today, a memorial plaque sits on the sidewalk in front of the building. This popular bar in New Orleans also occupied the building at the time of the fire. The building today still holds the offices and kitchen for the Jiminy, where the bar is on the first floor and the kitchen now the second. The third floor remains empty and partially damaged. The patrons and staff of the Jiminy Bar say that the building is haunted by the spirits of those who perished in the attack. People inside the Jiminy often report hearing cries for help and the smell of burning flesh, as if they are transported back to the night of the devastating blaze. Others have seen glowing orbs and feel as though they're being watched by an unseen presence. Paranormal investigators have revealed the presence of several ghosts, one of which is often seen walking the second floor of the building. Many believe that this may be the ghost of George Bud Matty, who often graced the piano for his friends at the upstairs. George helped others escape the blaze, even sacrificing his own shot at survival by going back into the building and rescuing others. His body was found under the piano on top of 2 other victims. As he spent his last moments trying to offer protection, his gentle soul still resides on the second floor, watching over the spirits of his dear departed friends. Many believe these souls are restless and want justice. They feel the murderous crime has been forgotten. Even many of the LGBTQ community today are unaware of what happened at the upstairs lounge. The victims of the upstairs lounge fire were subject of abuse at the hands of the media and local community. Their ghosts exist as a reminder of the hatred faced by the LGBTQ community in the past. Now, let's leave this bar that was the subject of a horrible hate crime and head over to our final bar this evening with the bar with the dueling pianos, Pat O'Brien's Bar. Pat O'Brien ran a speakeasy in the 600 block of St. Peter Street in New Orleans, French Quarter until the repeal of Prohibition. This is when he would officially open the bar on December 3rd, 1933. He developed a friendship with Charlie Cantrell, and after many years of fun and lots of poker games, the 2 men would purchase the building that is now home to Pat O'Brien's Bar at 718 St. Peter Street. This historical building was built in 1791 as a private home and later became the first Spanish theater in the U.S. It was converted back to a private residence until it was purchased by the men in 1942. Today, it is one of the most iconic nightclubs in the entire country. The old bar had an upright piano to entertain, but 718 St. Peter Street allowed them to go bigger and better with 2 baby grand pianos, and dueling piano entertainment was born. Dueling pianos concept evolved from the late 1890s ragtime era, where 2 pianists would duel for the crowd's attention and tips. Although there were 2 pianists at the original location, the new location provided much more space to accommodate 2 baby grand pianos. They tweaked the ragtime format to encourage audience participation by way of song requests. The show quickly became a favorite of locals, especially a few newspaper writers. Word spread across the country and propelled the bar's already familiar name. Through the years, a variety of performers have graced the stage: singers, horn players, and tray tapping, but always with the accompaniment of talented entertainers at the copper-topped pianos. Now, in the 1940s, many U.S. distilleries were used to manufacture necessities for wartime, and domestic liquor was scarce. Rum coming up the Mississippi from the Caribbean islands, however, was plentiful. In order to buy a case of bourbon, there was strong incentive to purchase large quantities of rum. With General Manager George Auchner Jr. at the helm, the holds in the bar experiments with recipes, and eventually everyone agreed that passion fruit was a hit. The glass shaped like a hurricane lamp was the perfect vessel, and the hurricane drink became a New Orleans favorite. George Auchner and his son, Sonny, purchased Pat O'Brien's Bar in 1978. It was their forward thinking that broadened the scope of Pat O'Brien's experience. They purchased 624 Bourbon Street in 1990 as a private event venue. Then, due to popular demand, Pat O'Brien's Courtyard restaurant opened as a full-service dining experience in 1996 and has been serving delicious food and specialty drinks ever since. They even have a more private area, the Briar's Suite, on the second floor overlooking Bourbon Street. Being such an old building, it's not surprising that the building is haunted. The piano bar is a central location for the ghostly activity. The most common reports are of a single piano key being struck or a phantom piano playing by itself long after the dueling pianists have finished for the night. Employees have heard the sound of running or tapping footsteps in the area when no one else is around. A chair has even moved across the floor on its own. The women's restroom on the second floor is said to be particularly active with spirits. Many women have reported hearing footsteps following them into the restroom or hearing noises in the adjacent stall with no one there. One specific story involves a writer who made an offhand remark to a person next to her at the sink. A man's voice replied, and when she reached for the towel he offered, her hand passed through his. During renovations of the fourth floor, which was once an apartment building, a window would not stay closed. Every night, the project manager would shut it, only to find it propped open again the next morning. The entire third floor and the staircase leading up to the second floor bathroom are known to make staff and visitors feel uneasy. Some employees have even quit due to the overwhelming feeling of a ghostly presence. Well, that concludes this week's video of Stormi Tells Ghost Stories Haunted New Orleans. I hope you enjoyed some of the darkest stories the Big Easy has to offer, from the former Irish pub with a dark past to a jazz club that was a lounge that attracted death, from a bar that has been visited by Frank Sinatra to a bar that was the site of a horrific tragedy, and finally to the most iconic nightclub in the country, the former O'Flaherty's Irish Pub, the Mahogany Jazz Hall, the Absinthe House, the Jiminy Bar, and the Pat O'Brien's Bar. Don't forget to check out some of my other playlists while you are here on Stormi Teaches Music. I release a cover video on Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern and a video of me teaching the song covered on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. You can catch the live stream of the lesson on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on my Patreon. On Stormi Does Art playlist, I have some partial videos of the live stream you can get on my Patreon for the gold tier or higher. These streams are daily at 11 a.m. Eastern. There is a link to my Patreon in the description box and comments below. Polls are still open for January's visit, and you can comment below for A, Dublin, Ireland, B, St. Petersburg, Russia, C, Madrid, Spain, or D, Rome, Italy. Finally, check out my Stormi Talks True Crime for some of the most heinous crimes in history. New videos are posted on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. For anyone who wants to make a one-time donation to the channel to help keep it running while I am building my audience, there is a QR code to my Venmo and CashApp on the screen. There is also a link to both in the description box and comments below. These donations will help make it so that I am able to get these videos up on time. I would have more time for the recording, filming, and editing that I do all on my own, so any help is appreciated. If you're ever in Wilmington, North Carolina area, sign up for the Wilmington Ghosts Walking Tour or the Wilmington Sprits and Spirits Pub Crawl with U.S. Ghost Adventures. You can have me or one of our other talented tour guides show you around the historic downtown and hear some of the darkest stories the beautiful city on the beach has to offer. While you're visiting, if you decide you want to stay or buy a vacation home, check out my Moving to Coastal Carolina channel and contact me, as I am a licensed realtor in the southeastern North Carolina area. Tune in next Tuesday at 6, well, not next Tuesday, because I actually am going to be out of town this week, so I will not be able to actually record any audio until I get back, so it will more than likely be sometime in the middle of the week next week for my Stormi Tells Ghost Stories Haunted New Orleans. Until then, have a great week and a happy Thanksgiving, and be safe.